How do usage companies convert that usage revenue into ARR? Well, let's find out in today's edition of SaaS Metrics School, where SaaS operators come to level up their career and business. Welcome. My name is Ben Murray. So, just held out a maxed out webinar today. Didn't know I had a webinar attendee limit, and we covered the definition and calculation of ARR in subscription and usage based models. This is after 100 hours of research, manually going through press releases and SEC filings. So let's focus on the usage component. If your usage, consumption, transactional, how are we turning that into an ARR number that we can present to our board, investors, and potential investors? So let's talk about the common ways that I notice when researching public tech companies, whether in the US or abroad. So if you have variable revenue, this was the most common example of how companies are turning that number into an annual recurring revenue number. And this example comes from Confluent. And here's the quote on how they're doing it. So it assumes Confluent Cloud consumption trends over a 12-month period. So turning this into a 12-month number based on 3 months of actual consumption, which does not account for future fluctuations and unpredictability in consumption rates. So pretty easy. So just taking that previous quarter and annualizing. Now, sometimes that seems too simple, but when we looked on the subscription side, the most common way was MRR times 12, right? Very straightforward. So that was the most common day. So basically a previous 90 days annualized. Now I'll go through one more example here. And also in the show notes, I'll have a link to this webinar where we had maxed out the attendees. And for a limited time, you can download the slides of all these definitions and how public companies are calculating this. We also talked about ARR statements, how AI companies are stating ARR. So make sure you grab that in the show notes. And the second most common was actually previous monthly annualized. So for subscription, it was the month was the most common. Now, this is the second most common under a variable model. And here we've got an example from Datadog. And so this is a bit of a mouthful, but they figure out their revenue run rate, taking MRR, multiplying it by 12. And MRR is calculated by aggregating for all customers during that month, monthly revenue from committed contractual amounts, additional usage from subscriptions for a committed contractual amount of usage that is delivered as used in monthly subscriptions, and on and on and on. So that was pretty complex. Again, you can grab these slides, the definitions from the webinar I just held in the show notes. But they're looking at a monthly number and annualizing a couple different revenue streams there to get to that variable number, or to get to that ARR number that again could be comprised of subscription plus variable revenue and getting their headline ARR numbers. So I'm seeing better and better disclosure. Some companies doing a fantastic job of disclosing ARR, how they define it, how they calculate it, why it's so important to them. And for some, they're calling it their North Star metric because they want to make sure investors understand the growth in their business. So today, talking a little bit about usage revenue, that variable revenue, how we turn that into an ARR number. And again, a method that is gaining steam. So if you do present this to the board, you're not just out on a limb creating some kind of crazy way to turn it into an ARR number. So that's today's edition of SaaS Metrics School. Again, action item here in the show notes, I have a link that'll take you to my No Fluff course series. And under the metrics module, you'll be able to see the replay for this webinar and also download the PDF of the about 59 slides. And again, it took me about 100 hours of research, manual research, going through all these filings. And I tried OpenAI and it just couldn't handle it because it was just the explanations are all over the place. So make sure you take advantage of that, grab those slides while they last, and I'll see you on the next edition of SaaS Metrics School. And thank you for your time today.